Should a wife give a cheating husband a way out? At that charity gala dinner in Manhattan, the topic suddenly became the hottest debate among the Upper East Side wives. When it was my turn to speak, my answer made the entire table fall into a weird, frozen silence. Then every pair of Botoxed eyes turned to me with open mockery. "Charlotte, did I hear that right? You'd give him no way out either?" The laughter exploded. I laughed too. After all, everyone in this circle knew I was the meek, useless, pushover trophy wife of the Harrington family. Years later, when they recalled that moment, the sneer in their eyes turned to pure terror. Because the way out I refused to give that night was nothing like the one they had in mind. When I stood up to leave the table, the snickers behind me still hadn't stopped. She actually said no mercy? Funniest thing I've heard all year. Right? An orphan who barely finished community college only climbed a ladder because she married into the Harringtons. 5 years and still no baby bump? She can't even take care of herself, yet dreams of blocking Alexander Harrington's escape route. If old Mr. Harrington weren't saving face, she'd have been kicked out ages ago. Alexander doesn't even pretend to respect her in public. She survives purely on swallowing every insult. They spoke loudly, not caring if I heard. This was the Harrington family's fundraiser for their new pharmaceutical plant in New Jersey. I was the official daughter-in-law. My husband's cousins still had to watch his mood to get their bonuses. Yet, in their eyes, they still ranked above me, because everyone knew Alexander Harrington never loved me. I pretended I heard nothing, kept my practiced polite smile, and continued greeting tables, fulfilling my duty as Mrs. Harrington. Tonight was the groundbreaking ceremony for Harrington Pharma's billion-dollar facility. Every major investor, senator, and hospital CEO was here. My father-in-law, James Harrington, had drilled it into us. The Harrington name is everything. Anyone who damages our reputation will pay. At that moment, warm applause and greetings erupted from the entrance. My husband, Alexander Harrington, had finally arrived, arm in arm with his executive assistant, Victoria Lang. Both in pristine white tux and gown, ceremonial flowers pinned to their lapels, looking like the bride and groom walking down the aisle at the Met Gala. "Mr. Harrington, Victoria!" The wives at our table practically tripped over themselves to stand and wave at her. Victoria gave an elegant nod and a dazzling smile. When she reached me, she stopped, voice dripping with concern. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry. Mr. Harrington had to take a last-minute call with the governor. My fault for not reminding him sooner. You must be exhausted running everything alone." I smiled gently. "It's fine. Work comes first. Let me know if you need anything." "We already ate. No need to trouble yourself." She brushed it off sweetly, then added, as if she'd just remembered, "Oh, one thing. My car's blocking the valet lane. I don't trust the staff to move it. Charlotte, could you park it for me?" The entire ballroom went dead silent, every gaze locked on me. I nodded obediently. Of course. From beginning to end, Alexander didn't say a word, just watched with that familiar, cold indifference. Of course he wouldn't speak. They'd known each other long before me. Their bond ran deeper. Victoria was 34, 2 years older than Alex. They met during his MBA at London Business School. As his assistant, she was brilliant, ruthless, and held more real power than any VP. As his mistress, she was demure, intoxicating, and had Alexander wrapped around her finger. Compared to a decorative, undereducated vase like me, the gap was laughable. Later, I handed her the keys while she lounged on the sofa chatting with my mother-in-law, Evelyn Harrington, former concert pianist, self-proclaimed aristocrat who found everything common beneath her. "Thank you for troubling yourself, Charlotte," Victoria said without even glancing at me, tone like she was addressing the help. Alexander, legs crossed, finally spoke, voice icy. What took so long? The donor wives were waiting. I lowered my head. I ran into an old client outside, said hello. I thought you were already here. Evelyn clicked her tongue loudly. Alexander works himself to death all day. You can't even handle something this small without dragging him in? Typical poor girl habits, can't even act the part. As she gestured dramatically, her red wine splashed across my whitened satin heels. Before the server could move, Evelyn snapped, "You do it." I knelt and wiped the stain slowly from her shoes while Alexander watched in silence, and Victoria's lips curved with meaning. That night, while I was sorting silent auction gifts in the study, the housekeeper knocked. "Mrs. Harrington, the family meeting is starting downstairs." I locked the donation list in the safe and went down. The living room was packed. Father-in-law James sat in the center, face grim. Alexander and his younger brother Liam on the left. Liam, a tenured professor at Columbia, only came home at night. Seeing me, he flashed a warm smile. Mother-in-law Evelyn sat on the right, eyes red, looking freshly cried out. James nodded at me. "Charlotte, sit." His voice was calm but carried weight. "When I first came to New York, I had nothing. Today, the Harrington Empire exists because I never forgot face, never forgot caution. That is our family rule." He turned to Evelyn, voice sharp. "In public, you humiliated Charlotte. You can discipline, but did you think how the world would laugh at her? At us?" James rarely lost his temper, but when he did, even Alexander listened. Evelyn lost all her usual elegance. "I was angry. I didn't expect her to actually kneel and wipe." "Ridiculous!" James slammed the table. "If Charlotte's grandfather hadn't taken me in and taught me the herbal business, there would be no Harringtons today. Rules are rules, no exceptions." Evelyn began sobbing. The Harringtons made their first fortune in botanical supplements. In the basement, they still kept antique mortar and pestle sets. Family punishment meant grinding herbs by hand for hours until your arms shook the next day. Alexander leaned back. "Dad, Charlotte doesn't mind. Mom's too old for that punishment. Let it go." "No." James cut him off. Evelyn wailed, "I have a charity recital for the Children's Hospital next week. If my hands shake, how can I play?" James fell silent. Liam spoke softly. "Dad." I sat quietly, hands folded. Finally, James softened. "Fine. Charlotte, would you take the punishment for your mother-in-law?" Liam shot up. "That's not fair." James sighed. "Rules can't be broken. Alexander has golf with investors tomorrow. Liam has lab work. Only Charlotte is free. Charlotte, what do you think?" I looked up, smiled gently at my father-in-law. "Of course, Dad." He nodded, satisfied. "Good girl. I never chose wrong." Alone in the basement, grinding herbs, Liam suddenly appeared at the door holding hot ramen. His eyes were dark, voice low. "Are you really made of clay? How can you have zero temper? Just say no. Who can force you?" "Liam, go. If Dad finds out..." He ignored me, took the pestle, and ground faster. I panicked. "You're not helping. You're hurting me. Remember last time you tried to help? I got punished double." He froze, voice breaking. "Charlotte, Dad only picked you because I was too young back then. Otherwise..." I cut him off, cheeks burning. "Stop talking nonsense. Go." He left the ramen and walked out fast. 3 hours later, aching all over, I returned to my bedroom. Separate rooms for 2 years. Alexander was on my bed, chest heaving, eyes red. clearly in the middle of another episode. His condition required extreme stimulation. After that incident, he hadn't touched me once. "Come here." "I can't do acupuncture tonight. My hands are shaking too much." I showed him my trembling fingers. Acupuncture was the only value I still had to him. His face darkened instantly. He was having the worst kind. Rigid, unable to finish. He growled, "You pick today to cause trouble?" I hesitated. "Doctor said your specialized treatment payment is due." He went livid, transferred $300,000 to the clinic with one tap, then snarled, "Get on the bed yourself." I undressed with shaking hands. Suddenly, I bent over and vomited. On the sheets, on his leg. Alexander, a germaphobe, leapt up, cursing, and stormed into the bathroom. When he came out, face terrifyingly dark, I whispered, "I'm sorry, must have eaten something bad." He ignored me, called someone, "I'm coming over tonight." Then he dressed and left without another word. At the door, he turned, voice dripping venom. "Charlotte, I can't wait to see how long you keep up the saint act." The next morning, I drove myself to Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan. My older brother, Benjamin Shaw, lay exactly as he had for the past 8 years. Eyes open, staring at the ceiling, breathing steady but empty. He had been a teenage chess prodigy, ranked top 10 or 18 in the country. One rain-slicked night on the way to nationals, a drunk driver crossed the median on I-95. Our parents died on impact, then survived as a locked-in vegetable. A new experimental peptide from Switzerland woke his eyes 2 years ago, but the cost was $1.4 million a year. My grandfather, Dr. Elias Shaw, legendary herbalist and the man who pulled James Harrington out of poverty, came out of retirement at 78 to keep Ben alive. He flew coast to coast seeing private patients, refusing to let the boy die. I sat by Ben's bed, held his hand, and whispered the same thing I whispered every week. "I'm still here, Ben. I haven't given up." Alexander Harrington was actually the husband my grandfather personally chose for me. 25 years ago, a half-frozen, broke James Harrington collapsed outside Granddad's tiny clinic in Queens after being robbed. Granddad saved him, taught him the formulas that later became Harrington Botanicals' first fortune. James knelt and washed my grandfather's feet every day for a year to repay the life debt. When he made it big, he sent private jets on every major holiday so he could keep washing those feet. When I was 22, Granddad sat both families down and arranged my marriage to Alexander. "They owe us a debt that can never be repaid," he told me. "They will treat you like a princess." 3 years after the wedding, Granddad died in his sleep among drying racks of ginseng and goji, overworked from paying for Ben. 1 month later, I accidentally overheard Alexander and James in the study. "The old man's dead. Why are we still bankrolling that corpse and his sister?" "Face, Alex, face. Elias Shaw saved my life and gave me the formulas. Half the senators on our payroll owe him favors from 30 years ago." Alexander's voice dropped to ice. "Then let me remind you, Dad. The only reason Harrington Botanicals is a billion-dollar company and not a Chinatown knockoff is because I stole the restricted formulas from his safe the night he died." That was the moment the meek little wife began to die. A week after the gala, I was carrying fresh herbal decoctions up to the executive floor when a little boy suddenly bolted out of the elevator and crashed into me. My Hermes bag chain hit his forehead. He burst into tears. Victoria Lang appeared instantly, scooping him up like a mother tiger. "Charlotte, what did my nephew do to offend you that you'd hit a child?" The boy's face was a miniature Alexander. Same stormy gray eyes, same arrogant tilt of the chin. "Your nephew?" I asked softly. Victoria's smile was venom wrapped in silk. "Yes, poor thing can't acknowledge his real parents yet. Some people block the way." She leaned closer. "But his father had DNA done years ago. Very far-sighted." I delivered the medicine to Alexander's office and found the entire uncle side of the family inside. Uncle Richard Harrington and his wife and 2 sons, all high-ranking at state-owned asset management firms that somehow funneled money into Harrington Pharma. Richard was mid-sentence. "Alex, we moved $42 million through shell entities registered in your name. You can't let us down now." Alexander, pale from a lingering cold, rasped, "It's only temporary custody of the funds until the FDA approval lands. I'm not keeping it." I stepped in. Alexander's eyes narrowed the second he saw me. "I told you no more of that Chinese witch brew. I'm busy." I placed both the herbal decoction and a blister pack of antibiotics on his desk. "This one works slower, but has fewer side effects." His phone rang. He turned to the window. I greeted Uncle Richard and Aunt Linda politely. They barely nodded. The cousins smirked. "Still no movement, Charlotte? All that money from the company fund going to keep your brother breathing and nothing to show for it. Some would call that cruel, keeping a vegetable alive." I poured water, opened the antibiotic, and placed it in Alexander's free hand, exactly the way I had for 2 years. Muscle memory. He swallowed without looking. I reminded him gently, "No alcohol tonight, remember?" He spun around, eyes lethal. "Can't you see I'm on the phone? Get out!" Aunt Linda laughed behind me. Some people never learn to read the room. That night, on the drive back to the Hamptons, a box truck ran the red light on Northern Boulevard and T-boned my Range Rover. The world went black. I woke up 5 days later in Mount Sinai ICU. The first face I saw was our butler, Thomas, eyes red. "Mrs. Harrington, thank God." I smiled weakly. Everyone must have been worried. His lips trembled. "Ma'am, Mr. Alexander passed away." The monitors beeped steadily. I felt nothing. Thomas continued, voice breaking. "That same night you were in surgery, he collapsed at a hotel. They rushed him here, but he was gone before they reached the ER." He hesitated. "The family's been handling everything. The cremation was this morning. Chairman Harrington asked me to watch until you woke. He says there are estate documents that need your signature urgently." He helped we sit up. "The car is downstairs." I pulled my hand away, calm as winter. "Tell Chairman Harrington if he's in such a hurry, he can come to me himself." An hour later, James Harrington stormed into the private suite, followed by Evelyn, Victoria, wearing subtle mourning black, and 2 lawyers carrying thick files. Evelyn started screaming the second she saw me eating hospital jello. "Your husband is ashes, and you're sitting here like you're on vacation? You slept 5 days while we buried our son." The duty nurse snapped. "This is a hospital. Lower your voice." James silenced Evelyn with one look and turned to me, voice heavy with practiced grief. "Charlotte, we're all devastated. But time is critical. The new facility loan is tied to Alexander's shares. We need you to sign the renunciation of inheritance so the board can move forward." A lawyer slid a document across. "Waiver of all spousal claims, Harrington Estate." James was already on the phone telling the board, "She'll sign, we're on our way," as if it were a foregone conclusion. I took the pen and used it to scratch my temple. The lawyer prompted, "Mrs. Harrington?" I looked up, perfectly polite. "If I don't want to sign something like this, I don't have to, correct?" Dead silence. James's phone slowly lowered. I smiled. Then I won't. For the first time in 8 years of marriage, James Harrington looked at me like I was a stranger. He recovered fast, voice softening into grandfatherly concern. "Charlotte, without Alexander, you've lost your protection. Let me at least transfer the Tribeca loft to your name as thanks for these years." I cut him off gently. "I'm used to the Hamptons house now. And that loft is the first property you bought when you came to New York, isn't it? You should keep it for your retirement with Mom." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. James forced a smile. "You're tired. We'll talk later." As they filed out, I heard Evelyn hiss in the hallway, "She still won't sign? That project loses millions every day." James's low growl, "Let her rest. There are other ways." Alone again, I closed my eyes and finally let the plan unfold in my mind. Every step I had prepared for 3 silent years. James Harrington was the most cautious man I had ever met. He never put all his eggs in one basket, never left a single gap. So he needed 2 faces for the world. Alexander, the heir, and Liam, the gentle professor who was supposed to keep me emotionally tethered and under control. I had passed every test of obedience. I had knelt, I had wiped shoes, I had swallowed every insult. And because I did, they finally let me close enough to touch the arteries of the empire. 2 days later, I discharged myself, and Liam picked me up, eyes bloodshot, thinner than I'd ever seen him. After the funeral, Dad sent me to the Princeton lab to finish a grant. "I only found out you were awake yesterday." I touched his sleeve. "Thank you for paying for the private room and the night nurses while I was out." He looked like he wanted to hug me, but didn't dare. "We're still family, Charlotte." Back at the Hamptons estate, the entire family was assembled in the grand salon for the police. James and Evelyn on one sofa, Uncle Richard's family on another, Victoria in tasteful black, little boy on her lap wearing a tiny Armani suit. James greeted me warmly. "Charlotte, you look well. We're all relieved." Evelyn sneered, "Some people arrange their husband's funeral, others get beauty sleep." I sat down gracefully. The detective cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harrington, because you were unconscious, we delayed your statement. Regarding the cause of your husband's death," Evelyn exploded first. "She killed him. She swapped his herbal medicine for antibiotics, then he drank alcohol and died. Murder." I widened my eyes, voice trembling. "Mom, are you saying Alexander died because of alcohol interaction?" The detective frowned. "You weren't told the cause of death?" I shook my head, tears welling perfectly on cue. "No one told me anything. I was told sudden illness." Then I turned to the detective, voice strengthening. "Officer, I reminded Alexander twice that day never to mix those antibiotics with alcohol. I even confirmed with his secretary there was no client dinner scheduled. So who was he drinking with? And who took him to the hospital? If someone knew he'd taken medication and still let him drink, then his death might not be accidental." Every head swiveled to Victoria. She shot to her feet. "Are you accusing me?" I looked at her calmly. "You were the last person with him. You told police he suddenly wanted to drink. Why would a man with a cold, on antibiotics, choose that night to drink hard liquor with his assistant?" The room went colder than the Atlantic in February. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Evelyn finally shrieked at her. "Answer her!" Victoria's composure shattered. She whispered, voice cracking, He needed alcohol to perform." Evelyn slapped her so hard the sound echoed off the marble. "You got my son drunk because he couldn't get it up, and it killed him." Her cheeks swelled instantly. The little boy started screaming. Upstairs, the new maid I had personally hired months ago live streamed the entire thing from the balcony camera straight to a private gossip forum with 1.2 million followers. By midnight, hashtag Harrington Mistress was the #1 trending topic in the country. The next day, I moved back into the main house. The court of public opinion had spoken. I was now the tragic widow. They were the depraved vultures. Liam took emergency leave from Columbia and was forced onto the board. One night in the rose garden, he whispered, "Charlotte, what you've endured all these years?" I let a single tear fall, perfectly timed. A thorn pricked my finger, blood beaded. He frantically pulled out a Band-Aid. When he looked up, our eyes locked under the moonlight. His ears went crimson. A week later, at the family dinner table, James announced, "Next Friday, the lawyers will finalize the estate division. Everything will be legal and transparent." Evelyn slammed her glass down. "She gets nothing! 5 years and not even a miscarriage?" Liam said quietly, "Under New York law, surviving spouse inherits 1/3 outright. Prenups don't override spousal elective share when there's death." James's eyes flickered. He had written the prenup himself to block exactly that. I smiled sweetly. "I have no objections, Dad." He relaxed a fraction. "Good. Tomorrow you'll come to the office and co-sign some project documents so the new facility can break ground again." I nodded. "Of course." The next day, every shareholder was in the Harrington Pharma boardroom. When my turn came to approve the $1.2 billion synthetic herbal supplement line, the exact line my grandfather had refused to license because it was 97% filler and food coloring, I put down the pen. I vote no. The room froze. Uncle Richard roared, "You ungrateful!" I looked James dead in the eye. "You're putting sugar water in capsules, slapping ancient botanical secret on the label, and planning to sell it for $400 a bottle to cancer patients? My grandfather would roll in his grave." James's face turned the color of ash. For the first time, the mask slipped completely. Uncle Richard lunged across the table, screaming about the $42 million his branch had loaned to Alexander. I smiled. "You mean the $42 million in bearer bonds that can't be explained to the SEC or the IRS? Be my guest. Sue me for it." The two cousins tried to grab me. My 4 new bodyguards, paid for by selling Alexander's vintage Patek collection, dropped them to the marble floor in under 3 seconds. I looked down at the groaning men. "Next time you lay a hand on me, you'll leave New York the same way you arrived, with nothing." I never slept in that house again. I moved into the Soho penthouse I had quietly purchased 18 months earlier under an LLC. Liam called, voice shaking with too many emotions. "Whatever you're doing, it's not on my behalf. You know that, right?" I watched the city lights. "I never blamed you, Liam." He was quiet for so long I thought the call dropped. "When this is over, can I take you somewhere far away from all this?" I closed my eyes. Yes. The will reading was held in the 48th floor boardroom of Cravath, Swain & Moore, the most expensive law firm in Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows, the Hudson River glittering behind us like liquid steel. Every seat taken. James Harrington, spine straight as a ruler, face carved from granite. Evelyn, eyes swollen but dripping diamonds. Victoria Lang in a black Roland Mouret dress, sharp enough to cut glass. Little boy on her lap clutching a $40,000 Hermes teddy bear. Uncle Richard's entire branch, 4 pale faces smelling blood in the water. And me. Alone, on my side of the table. The senior partner cleared his throat. "Before we begin, Ms. Lang has filed an appearance on behalf of minor child Alexander James Lang Harrington, claiming paternity. Victoria slid a DNA report across the mahogany like a winning poker hand. Confirmed 99.9999%, my son is the sole blood heir. She finally looked at me, eyes glittering with 8 years of pent-up victory. Game over, Charlotte. The lawyers turned to me. Mrs. Harrington, do you have any documents to present? I opened a slim dove-gray folder and removed one sheet of heavy cream paper sealed in museum-grade plastic. Alexander's handwriting, dated 6 months ago, witnessed by 2 board-certified notaries, and this was the part that made James's pupils blow wide, by Senator Catherine Whitmore, my godmother and the chair of the Senate Health Committee. I read aloud, voice soft, almost shy. To my wife, Charlotte Elizabeth Shaw Harrington. In the event of my death, I leave my entire estate, real property, stock, cash, intellectual property, and all future interests to the legal child or children born of our marriage. Should no child yet exist, my trustees are instructed to preserve the entirety in trust until such child is born. This revocable living will supersedes all prior agreements. Signed, Alexander J. Harrington. Victoria laughed, high and brittle. Nice forgery, except everyone in this room knows Charlotte can't have children. Alexander had a vasectomy the month before the wedding. I was there when he came home with the ice pack. She turned to Evelyn, triumphant. Tell them, Evelyn. Tell them why there's never been a pregnancy. Evelyn's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. Victoria leaned forward, voice dripping acid. He did it so he could marry the orphan for her grandfather's formulas and still keep me pregnant in London. That was our deal. Silence so thick you could choke on it. Then I placed my hand on my still flat stomach and smiled the smallest, sweetest smile I had saved for this exact second. I'm 10 weeks pregnant.
4 heart attacks threatened to happen at once. Victoria shot to her feet so fast the chair rolled back and smashed into the glass wall. Impossible! He was sterile. I tilted my head. Vasectomies fail in 1 in 2,000 cases, or perhaps he never had it at all and simply told you that to keep you quiet for 8 years. I let the silence do the rest. Victoria's face went the color of old paper as the possibility sank in. She had hidden her own son for nothing. James finally found his voice hoarse. Even if the will is authentic, the condition is legal child of the marriage. You have no proof the child is Alexander's. I slid a second envelope across the table. Mount Sinai Prenatal Paternity Report, signed by 3 board-certified geneticists. 99.99997% probability of paternity. The wonders $800,000 and a locked lab can do overnight. Victoria screamed, actually screamed, and lunged across the table at me. Security tackled her before her manicure reached my throat. The little boy began wailing. Evelyn grabbed Victoria by the hair and slammed her face into the table so hard the DNA report fluttered like a white flag. James finally found his voice, hoarse. Even if the will is authentic, the condition is legal child of the marriage. You have no proof the child is Alexander's. I slid a second envelope across the table. Mount Sinai Prenatal Paternity Report, signed by 3 board-certified geneticists. 99.99997% probability of paternity. the wonders $800,000 and a locked lab can do overnight. Victoria screamed, actually screamed, and lunged across the table at me. Security tackled her before her manicure reached my throat. The little boy began wailing. Evelyn grabbed Victoria by the hair and slammed her face into the table so hard the DNA report fluttered like a white flag. James finally found his voice, hoarse. Even if the will is authentic, the condition is legal child of the marriage. You have no proof the child is Alexander's. I slid a second envelope across the table. Mount Sinai prenatal paternity report, signed by 3 board-certified geneticists. 99.99997% probability of paternity. The wonders $800,000 and a locked lab can do overnight. Victoria screamed, actually screamed, and lunged across the table at me. Security tackled her before her manicure reached my throat. The little boy began wailing. Evelyn grabbed Victoria by the hair and slammed her face into the table so hard the DNA report fluttered like a white flag. James stood frozen, watching his empire slide into my womb. I rose slowly, smoothing my black silk dress over the tiny curve no one had noticed yet. Gentlemen, the child I carry is Alexander Harrington's sole legal heir. Until he or she turns 25, I am the sole trustee and voting controller of every share Alexander owned. I looked straight at James. That's 51% of Harrington Pharma. Effective immediately. Then I turned to Victoria, still pinned by 2 guards, mascara rivers down her cheeks. Oh, and the $28.4 million Alexander transferred to you over 8 years? Marital assets. I'll expect the first wire by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or the DA gets the ledger. I walked to the door, paused. One more thing. The Tribeca loft, the G650, the house in Aspen, the vineyard in Napa, all titled jointly. Mine now. I smiled over my shoulder. Thank you for coming to my baby shower. 6 months later, 3:17 a.m., Infinity Pool, Harrington Estate, Hamptons. Full moon turning the water silver. James Harrington swam his daily 500 meters alone, every stroke mechanical, rage barely contained. He hauled himself out, water streaming from his 70-year-old body, still powerful from decades of discipline. I was waiting on the teak chase, 9 months pregnant, barefoot, black silk robe open over the swell. He froze when he saw me. For the first time in 30 years, James Harrington missed a breath. You're up late, Dad. He wrapped a towel around his waist, voice low and dangerous. You've taken everything. Leave my house. I laughed softly. Your house? The deed transferred to the trust this morning. You have 30 days. He stepped closer, veins bulging. Where is Liam? His voice cracked on the name. I stood, belly leading the way, and walked to the edge of the pool until we were toe to toe. Liam asked me to be his girlfriend for 1 day. I said yes. We went to the movies, had hot dogs, climbed a little mountain in the Catskills. Very sweet. I leaned in until I could smell chlorine and terror. Then my driver took him to Port Authority and put him on a one-way bus to a logging camp in British Columbia. No phones, no passport, no English for 2,000 miles. They pay in cash and don't ask questions. James made a sound like a dying animal. I smiled. You taught me caution, James. 2 faces are never enough. I always keep a third. I placed his hand on my belly so he could feel his grandson kick. Feel that? That's the future owner of everything you built on my grandfather's bones. James' left arm went numb. His mouth twisted violently to the right. He collapsed. hitting the Italian tile with a wet slap, body jerking, drool already pooling. Stroke. Catastrophic.
I knelt beside him, voice gentle as a lullaby. You watched my grandfather die in agony because you stole the one formula he refused to sell. Tonight, you get to feel what real helplessness is. I took out my phone, dialed 911, and put it on speaker so he could hear every word. Yes, hi. My father-in-law just had a massive stroke by the pool. Please take your time, no rush. Then I sat back, cradled my belly, and watched the man who once made queens and senators tremble piss himself under the Hamptons moon. 3 months later, I gave birth to a perfect boy, Elias James Shaw Harrington. The DNA test, official, public, ironclad, confirmed Alexander as the father. Money can do many things. Silence is one of them. I kept my promise. James and Evelyn still live in the original one-bedroom walk-up in Flushing where James slept on the floor in 1998. No furniture with seats, no bed, nothing he can fall from and hurt himself worse. He drags his paralyzed half around the linoleum all day, drooling, eyes following Evelyn as she scrubs other people's toilets for minimum wage. Every month, I send a new visitor. Old business partners, Forbes journalists, the senator who once called him Kingmaker. They bring flowers. He cries without sound. Victoria lost custody. The boy now calls me Mommy. He asks sometimes why the pretty lady in the old photos never visits. I tell him she's very busy paying restitution. $28.4 million plus 9% compound interest is a heavy load. And Liam, some nights I get an unmarked envelope with a single Polaroid, a man in flannel, beard down to his chest, standing beside stacks of felled pine under northern lights. On the back, in handwriting I still recognize, I kept my promise. I'm protecting you the only way I can now, from very far away. One ordinary morning in Mount Sinai's neuro ICU, I was peeling an apple for Ben when his fingers twitched. Then his eyes, those brilliant, fierce eyes I thought I'd lost forever, focused on me. His lips moved. The first words in 8 years. Barely a breath. I'm back, little sister. Now let's finish this together. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. I truly appreciate all your comments, feedback, and thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next stories.